There's an interesting cafe near my place called the Mighty Oak. It's like any other cafe until you look behind it. Yeah, this is someone's house? And there are other businesses like this across the city. Be Fresh on Cypress Street, the Vernon Drive Grocery Market, Davy Flowers, all these businesses on Denman Street, and perhaps my favorite example, this smoke and convenience store in Riley Park. What they all have in common is that they are literally on the front yard of someone's house.
Well, these kind of businesses are illegal today, and I think we should change that.
Oh, there you stand now, baby, looking sad and blue. Now there's just one thing to say now, baby, I'm moving on.
All right, let's back up a bit. How does something like this even happen?
Well, it starts here. Vancouver's West End in the early 1900s. Back then, this area was nicknamed Blue Blood Alley, a neighborhood of mansions for Vancouver's wealthiest residents. But then everything changed when when several streetcar lines were built throughout the neighborhood. More and more people began moving into the area. For many homeowners, this was an opportunity to start a business. And where? Well, often it was right on their front lawn. When you look at photographs from that time, it's truly incredible. You have tailors, grocery stores, candy shops, and even compressed gas, all setting up shop in front of people's houses.
You'll find a similar story in older neighborhoods across North America. As more and more people started moving into an area, homeowners set up businesses inside or right in front of their houses, and a lot of them are still around today. For me, that story reveals an opportunity.
If there's one thing we have a lot of in North America, it's single-family houses with empty, grass-covered front yards. We have vast neighborhoods upon neighborhoods upon neighborhoods of these houses, many of them next to busy roads connected to public transit. Well, there's a ton of hidden potential in these areas. A typical front yard in Vancouver takes up 20% of the property, while the backyard takes up 45% of the property. To me, that means there's a ton of room to build a structure in the front, in the back, or even above and below the house to support a business. You could start a bakery, a cannabis shop called The Bakery, or an Indian seafood restaurant called Bay Curry. The possibilities are endless.
And I think there's a pretty compelling case for this. It's estimated that over 50% of businesses in Canada are based in the home, and for good reason.
This is by far the most affordable and low-risk way of starting an enterprise. You can experiment with new ideas that might not be profitable right away, but ultimately go on to become highly successful companies. Okay, sorry, that was a weird example, but seriously, companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, and Spanx that changed the world in waistlines. These corporations didn't get their start in a fancy office. They started in a house. So by adding spaces for businesses and houses today, I think, in all seriousness, we could be kickstarting companies that shape the world tomorrow.
But of course, today, you can't build a business in your front yard. You technically can't even set up a lemonade stand. So why is that? Why did we stop allowing front yard businesses? Well, as always, there's another side to this story.
And that is the neighbor side of the story. These front yard businesses could be a problem to people living nearby. If your neighbor starts selling compressed gas out of their house, yeah, you might be a bit upset. Some businesses were noisy or smelly, and there were concerns that this would reduce property values for neighboring houses.
For many, this resulted in a very black and white mentality about homes and businesses. They had to be separated.
In 1928, the City of Vancouver introduced the zoning bylaw. This divided the city into different areas based on what the land could be used for. There were industrial districts for factories and warehouses, commercial districts for businesses, apartment districts for apartments, and residential districts for houses. And there was a key criteria for those residential districts: a setback rule. A rule that required all buildings to be placed a minimum distance from the street, creating a front yard. From here on out, there would be no more front yard businesses. No grocery stores, no tailors, no compressed gas, no nothing.
So why was this setback so important? Well, that's where things get a bit more complicated.
The most often cited reason is public health. Many city policies at the time were created in response to poor conditions in crowded and polluted downtown areas. These setback rules were seen as necessary to make sure people had enough open space, air circulation, and sunlight. Another interesting reason: widening roads. Enforcing a setback rule meant that cities could widen streets in the future without pulling a houseman and knocking down old buildings. But to a certain extent, this was also about looks. For Harlan Bartholomew, the planner that created these rules, one of the key issues with front yard businesses was that they hurt the appearance of a good many resident streets.
I think this is a very important part of the story. These rules were not just about public health and transportation, they were also about protecting aesthetics, and the aesthetics of a certain class of people.
At the time, lawns were a symbol of status and wealth. If you could afford to have an empty piece of land just sitting there, you were pretty well off. So requiring every house to have a lawn ensured that wealthy neighborhoods stayed wealthy. But eventually, those upper class ideals became the broader ideals of North American society, being a huge influence over a boom in housing construction after the Second World War. Soon, having a house with a front lawn was no longer a luxury, it was a fixture of the middle class.
Today, those ideals are ingrained into our neighborhoods across North America. Zoning ensures that businesses are separated from houses, and setback rules make sure that front yards remain front yards. But I can't help but feel like we threw out the baby with the bathwater.
The old front yard businesses that still exist today are actually cherished. Many love that they're within walking distance of their houses and that they're locally owned. Nobody complains that the cafe down the street is creating a huge disturbance or blocking out the sun or bringing down property values. No, these places are seen as important gathering spaces for the community. And recently, the tides appear to be changing. This year, the city of Vancouver voted to allow small grocery stores in residential neighborhoods. That's right, we legalized weed in 2018, and in 2021, we legalized convenience stores.
But even without legalization, this is already happening to a certain extent.
If you spend enough time in Metro Vancouver's suburban neighborhoods, you'll start to notice something. Shops and services in people's homes. In defiance of God and the zoning bylaw, they sell everything from pool tables and car batteries to pet supplies and bicycles. They offer services like styling your hair, doing your accounting, and tailoring your clothes. I think these businesses are a benefit to their neighborhoods, providing goods, services, and employment for a lot of people. And it's worth mentioning that many of them have become a staple of suburban immigrant communities. I think it's a shame that our zoning bylaws and setback rules force these businesses to fly under the radar, hidden away inside houses.
And ultimately, it makes me wonder, if so many people are supposedly breaking the rules, are they wrong? Or is it the rules that are wrong?
I don't care where you go. Don't care how long you stay.
I think that's a good place to segue into an opportunity that Urbanarium has just launched. It's an ideas competition that anyone can enter called the Mixing Middle. They're basically asking entrants to think of how we can add a mix of uses into single-family neighborhoods. You know, if the pandemic has taught me anything, it's that the places we reside in can also be places of work, commerce, recreation, and other essentials of daily life. So how can we create spaces above, below, in front, or behind traditional houses to accommodate all that? If you'd like to find out more about the competition and its prizes, check out themixingmiddle.ca. And if you're looking for some compressed gas, well, come find me.